Hi, everyone. Welcome to another author interview. Today, joining me is Roger Brown, author of Unlocking Energy Efficiency, Maximizing Utility Savings with Zero Equipment Investment. Hi, Roger. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, can you provide us with some background on your experience in the energy efficiency industry and what inspired you to write this book?
Sure. My background is in industrial engineering, so I was working at a manufacturing plant. I'd been working there about 6 or 7 years, and I saw that no one was looking at energy costs, even though this plant had a $5 million a year budget. And I just decided to take it on my own, even though I didn't really know anything about energy, and just worked at it from a problem-solving perspective, and was able to take well over $1 million, well over 20% of those costs out just by asking questions and spending a lot of time on it. So that's what created the spark. And then my job got eliminated. And that's what got me into independent consulting. And the reason I wanted to really write the book is there's a huge disparity between what customers know they can get from a utility and what the utility will let them have and what the utility will tell them without really, really good questions and really specific questions that they can do. So you have this perfect storm of all this great savings that's available out there without really having to change anything about your operation that's available at the utility that no one is going to tell you about unless you specifically ask. And so in the book, that's exactly what we've done. We've got a checklist of things that you can go for that exist that we've gotten over the years at my company, my consulting group, and any manufacturer can achieve these results. It's different in different places around the country. Mostly these opportunities exist in Canada and the United States, but there's tremendous money to be saved without ever having to change anything, without ever having to turn off lights or anything that traditionally is thought of as efficiency in the energy business.
And so, in Unlocking Energy Efficiency, you discussed the three pillars of cost reduction. Could you elaborate on these pillars and why they are crucial for businesses looking to maximize utility savings?
Yeah, and this just comes from my experience that the first thing you need to do is be open to everything that is possible that could possibly result in a savings, and that just comes through good old-fashioned research, and then you've got to dive into. Secondly, you've got to dive into what the real risk and rewards are. They're not going to be available at the surface level. That at the surface level, everything in the utility business is painted to be super high risk because lawyers are writing the rates. Utilities are a business where they're trying to protect this incumbent income stream that they've got. They've been granted a geographic authority where they can bill anybody in this geographic area. And so there's no real incentive for them to do anything other than protect their income stream. So they make the rates very inaccessible and complicated. So you've got to dive into what the real risk is. And that involves questions that I've got laid out in the book. Not just to understand what could happen, but what is most likely to happen. What have they done in the past? And then finally, once you've done your homework, once you've identified those options are available and done your homework on the details, you got to follow through because the nature of utilities is that, as I say, there's no real accountability at the customer level. It's easy for things to get dropped, and there's no one throwing a party at the utility for saving you a lot of money. That they will do it if you insist upon it, but it may take sometimes 6 months, it may take a year to get it done. But once identified, you got to be persistent in following up with them to be able to get anything done. And with those three elements, you can get anything done and save a lot of money.
So something I'm sure many people are curious about, can you share some examples of low-cost or no-cost strategies that businesses can implement immediately to start seeing energy savings?
And yes, and these are like line items in the book, so
Mhm.
you can get the whole playbook. But one is sales tax, uh, that a lot of U.S. states, not so much in Canada, but in U.S. states, large manufacturers and certain other groups that are involved in things like research and development. It depends on the state, but there are opportunities to eliminate sales taxes all or at least partially on that load that the manufacturers are paying all that money to the utility on. It takes some work. It often takes what's called a predominant use study, but we've seen multi-$100,000 refunds depending on the state, and savings that go forward in the tens of thousands of dollars a month if you got a very large bill, because some sales tax is 7-8% in some states, going on forever. Another example is a large that I think is just interesting. Just shows you the nature of the way utilities operate. It's a very large customer in the oil and gas business that we had that was in a particular area of Texas that had they had shut down. They decided just shut down operations and move them somewhere else. So they were using no energy at all, but yet they were paying somewhere in the order of $75,000 a month to the utility still. And they were just been paying it month after month after month. It was a giant multi-billion-dollar company, and there was no internal process to see and look, does this make sense? We're not really doing anything here. Should we be paying this money? And we reached out to the utility and found out that there was a rule that said we can continue to charge you for this demand charges that you signed up for when you first started this operation. But we asked, can you just not do that anymore? And they said, okay. But if we asked, they wouldn't have said it. So we challenged the status quo. Just because something's written in the rules does not mean that's the way it has to be. So we challenge everything, and I encourage anybody who reads the book or anybody out there in manufacturing or commercial operation, don't take things as the status quo just because they're written down in a rule book, because utilities have a lot more flexibility than they will tell you they have.
So talking about utility, what role do you believe utility companies play in helping businesses achieve energy efficiency, and how can businesses effectively collaborate with them to maximize savings?
That's a great question. They don't really have any responsibility to help you reduce costs. A lot of them will try to put together programs where they'll encourage efficiency, meaning, for example, LED light bulbs, and rates that might encourage you to turn off things during certain times. But just think about it. What supplier has an incentive to reduce customer purchases of their product? There's no real incentive. So they're not going to deploy people to really drive that. You just have to realize when dealing with a utility, the nature of the utility. There's no one there that is going to carry the banner for your savings. There's nothing in it for them to do that. They tend to attract a very conservative group of people to be reps for manufacturing companies and everybody else, commercial operations. And it's just, the system's just rigged to make you think they're taking care of your best interest, but they're not really. And I'm not saying that they're doing anything diabolical. They're just not incentivized to really try that hard, reduce your costs. You got to be the advocate. You got to be the one pushing for it. It's a conservative group of people who are going to tell you no frequently, just because that's their orientation. Utilities are safe, comfortable, place to work where not a lot of threats and challenges. It's a well-paid profession to be a utility rep, but there's no parties thrown for those reps that are helping reduce people's costs. And you just have to be aware of that reality when dealing with them.
Yeah. So speaking about that, how can businesses identify and eliminate obvious waste in their energy consumption without significant upfront investment?
Mm-hmm. Well, everything that we talk about in the book, there's nothing really that requires an investment. That's the beautiful thing about it. Investment in time, yes, but not an investment in capital. All the things that we talk about in the book are things that are available that are paper changes, pretty much like sales tax and reducing demand during certain times if you can. What one thing I want people to realize too, Anna, is that most of the big opportunities fall into this area without having to invest a dime in equipment, and you don't have to upgrade your systems or change anything about your operation. You don't have to change people's behavior, getting them to turn things off. That being said, once you've gone through that process, the process that we advocate first, which is the no cost ways of getting big money, a big opportunity that I see beyond that is people leaving equipment on when nobody's there. And I'll give you an example of that. When I was back at the manufacturing plant, we had an experiment where we were shutting the plant down. It was a 24/7 plant, but we shut it down just to see how low we could get the power consumption. It was a 5 megawatt plant, 5,000 kilowatts. And we were not able to get it with everything we could figure out to shut off. We could not figure out how to get it below about 500 kilowatts. So there was something running in these big manufacturing plants. It's very difficult to identify, but that's an exercise where you can improve efficiency after you've done the steps that we advocate, and turning things off and just seeing if you got some phantom power load and really attacking that. That was 500 kilowatts, which is bigger than a lot of plants just by itself. 500 kilowatts that was getting billed no matter what we did. If we didn't produce any products or anything. And I left the company before we could really attack the problem, but that exists almost everywhere, this phantom power drain.
And so for those who might be skeptical about the effectiveness of cost-saving measures without substantial investment, what would you say to convince them otherwise?
Gosh, great question. Great question. That for 28 years, been continually surprised at how much money there is out there for consumers, mostly commercial and manufacturers. And the reason why, and this little dose of reality, everybody knows, but I'm going to say it because I think it will help clarify the opportunity. But these opportunities are created. It's why most of these utilities will have a rate book of 100 pages, 200 pages. Those rates, they're not doing those, coming up with those just for fun. They come up with them to work in concert, usually with a big manufacturer or a big commercial operation. They're trying to bring their story. So it makes sense from a commercial standpoint that they would develop alternate plans that they think would getting more business. But is in conflict with the edict that I talked about in the very beginning, that utilities are not required by any law to optimize your cost. They are not required to put you on the lowest rate. Anybody that's ever called up their cell phone company and found out that there was a better rate that they got just for asking, which I do just occasionally. I'll call up my cell phone company and just say, do you have anything better out there? And most of the time they will. They're just not incentivized to deliver that to you. So it makes sense from a commercial standpoint. Oh, You win by being aggressive and pushing these concepts and treating these utilities like they're a regular commercial entrepreneurial business, like you probably are as a manufacturer. Treat them the same way as you would any other supplier. Don't assume because they've got their rules written down and they're approved by a public service commission that they're set in stone. They are a business at the end of the day, and there are people involved that want more of your business. You might not be dealing with them one-on-one with your rep, but there's another layer to these utility companies where if you pursue these savings, you can get results if you just treat them that way. And one of the big obstacles that we have on it and have for years and years is people think that it's just like their home. Like you get the bill, pay the bill, and you get to keep the power on. But with bigger companies, that's just not the case. There's just a lot of things that you can do to save money.
So could you share a success story or case study from your experience where business implemented the principles from your book and achieved significant cost savings?
Yes, actually, we had a big paper client, and this has been years ago. And just to make a long story short, found a couple things right off the bat that would save them over $1 million a year. Uh, and we presented to them that, oh, we know about that. We can't do it. So we said, well, why not? How come? And they explained they had their reasons, but able to do what I talked about in the 3 pillars, which was investigate on a detailed level how this particular program that would save them that much money was not the threat that they had been told it was by the utility company, that was not the threat that was in their rates, but actually was hardly any threat at all. So we put all that out on paper, and it was still not that simple. We still had to get to the right person in the organization to make that decision. But the company's been saving that money for the past 25 years now. That was something that happened early on in my consulting career, and that's just one example. I've seen many of them, and they're not that difficult. Nothing is that difficult to identify. It's difficult to make it happen. It takes tenacity to make any of these things happen because of the people dealing with the utilities.
Well, that's quite substantial savings. So maybe as a last question, what advice or key takeaway would you like readers to remember after finishing your book?
Good question. The main thing I would like people to realize is just see things through my eyes, that there are thousands and millions of dollars available for you as a manufacturer or a commercial operation, but you've got to adopt an entrepreneur's mentality as an organization. You've got to identify what the problems are, and you've got to research, and it takes time, research and find out what the real risk and rewards are, not the ones that appear on paper, because those are all written in as a worst case scenario to try to frighten you off in a lot of cases. And then the third thing is you just have to be tenacious. You can't give up. It's easy for organizations to say, well, we're in the business of making widgets. We don't have time to pursue energy savings. But it can be the if not the first, the second biggest line item on a company's cost spreadsheet. And if you attack that, you can sometimes take 10 to 15% off of that without spending a dime.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's a great way to end it. I will put the link to Roger's book, Unlocking Energy Efficiency, down below in the description, so check it out. And thank you so much again, Roger.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.